Every pattern you repeat or every choice you can't explain and every version of yourself you keep returning to has a blueprint. Welcome to the Echo Principle, where we map the unseen architecture of human behavior. If you think carefully, you belong here, so drop a like and make sure to subscribe to our channel. Picture a man sitting across from you at a table. He believes something that is factually wrong. You know it is wrong, you have the evidence right there in your hand and you slide it across the table. He reads it and looks up at you and believes the wrong thing even more strongly than he did before. That is not a thought experiment. That is not a rhetorical device to open a video. That is a documented, repeatable, measurable psychological phenomenon. It has been observed in laboratories, in the real world, in political discourse, and in your living room. Around every dinner table where someone has ever tried to change someone else's mind with a fact. The phenomenon has a name: the backfire effect. And once you understand the mechanism behind it, you will never look at an argument the same way again. Not because you will become better at winning arguments, but because you will understand that the entire foundation of what you thought an argument was is wrong. The idea that minds change when presented with sufficient evidence is not just occasionally incorrect. In specific conditions involving identity and belief, it is precisely backwards. The evidence does not open the door. The evidence locks it. In 2010, a political scientist named Brendan Nyhan and his colleague Jason Reifler published a study. It became one of the most cited and most argued about papers in political psychology. They wanted to know what happened when politically engaged Americans were presented with factual corrections to false beliefs they already held. Not vague beliefs. Specific ones. One of the most potent test cases they used was the claim that Iraq possessed weapons of mass destruction at the time of the 2003 invasion. This belief had been officially corrected. The weapons were not found. Government reports confirmed their absence. The factual record was clear. Nyhan and Reifler presented participants who believed the WMD claim with an article that included a direct correction. A factual statement from official sources establishing that no weapons had been found. And what they measured was not whether participants found the correction credible. What they measured was whether the correction changed the strength of the original belief. For a significant portion of participants, particularly those with strong prior ideological investment, the correction did not weaken the belief. It strengthened it. This is the backfire effect in its cleanest form, and it should disturb you more than it probably does. To understand why this happens, you have to understand what a belief actually is at the level of cognition and identity. Most people treat a belief like a file in a cabinet. A discrete piece of stored information that can be updated when better information arrives. Open the cabinet, remove the old file, insert the new one. Clean, logical, efficient. But this is not how beliefs work when the belief is load-bearing. When a belief is connected to identity, to group membership, to a person's model of how the world operates, and who the good people are, and what the stakes of being wrong would actually mean, then the belief is not a file in a cabinet. It is a structural beam. And when you present evidence against a structural beam, you are not offering an update. You are threatening the entire building. The mind does not respond to that threat with curiosity. It responds with defense. And the defense mechanism that activates is not subtle. The person searches for counter-arguments. They find reasons to dismiss the source. They remember other evidence that supports the original belief. They reconstruct the case for what they already thought. And in doing so, they do not return to where they started. They end up more certain than before. This process has a longer history than the 2010 paper. Leon Festinger identified the foundational mechanism in the 1950s when he developed the theory of cognitive dissonance. Festinger observed that when a person holds two pieces of information that cannot both be true at the same time, the resulting psychological discomfort is not neutral. It is actively unpleasant. And the mind is motivated to resolve it. The logical resolution is to update the belief that is contradicted by better evidence. But logic is not the only tool available to the motivated mind. The alternative resolution is to attack the credibility of the new information. To reframe it. To find a reason why it does not actually contradict the existing belief. To dismiss the messenger. To expand the conspiracy. Festinger documented this in a study of a doomsday cult whose leader had predicted the world would end on a specific date. When the date passed and the world did not end, the cult did not dissolve. The members did not conclude that the prophecy was wrong. They concluded that their faith had saved the world. The disconfirmation became evidence of their own power. The falsification strengthened the belief. This is not irrationality in the simple sense. This is a different kind of rationality, one optimized not for truth, but for the preservation of a coherent self. What Nyhan and Reifler added to Festinger's foundation was specificity and political context. They were not studying abstract beliefs or fringe cults. They were studying ordinary, politically engaged citizens responding to mainstream political information. And the pattern held. The more ideologically invested a participant was, the more likely the correction was to produce the backfire effect. Which means the people most in need of accurate information are the people most protected against receiving it. This is the part that should make you sit with the implications for a moment. What it suggests about democratic discourse, about evidence-based policy, about the entire project of public information, is genuinely bleak. If the citizens most committed to a political position are the citizens most immunized against factual correction, then the concept of a shared factual reality as the foundation of political debate is not just idealistic. It is structurally undermined by the way human cognition actually works. You cannot argue someone out of a position they did not argue themselves into. That line has been attributed to various sources. But the research behind it is real, and it is what Nyhan and Reifler spent years documenting. The identity dimension of this is impossible to overstate. It is also the part that most explanations of the backfire effect gloss over. When a belief is identity constitutive, meaning when holding that belief is part of what it means to be the kind of person you are, then an attack on the belief is experienced neurologically as an attack on the self. Brain imaging studies have shown that the same neural regions activated by physical threat are activated when a person's deeply held beliefs are challenged. The anterior cingulate cortex. The amygdala. The threat response is not metaphorical, it is biological. The body does not distinguish between a punch and a fact that contradicts your worldview, when that worldview is the architecture of your identity. And when the threat response is active, the prefrontal cortex, which handles rational evaluation and evidence weighing, is literally less capable of doing its job. You are not dealing with a person who is being stubborn or stupid or dishonest. You are dealing with a person whose threat response has been activated, whose rational processing has been partially suppressed by the very argument you thought would help. There is a concept adjacent to the backfire effect that helps explain why the phenomenon is so durable. It is called identity protective cognition. Yale law professor Dan Kahan developed this framework to explain why highly educated and analytically sophisticated people are not less susceptible to motivated reasoning than less educated people. In many cases, they are more susceptible. Because the cognitive tools that make someone good at evaluating evidence are the same tools that make someone good at generating counterarguments. A person with high analytical intelligence and a strong identity investment in a belief does not become more objective when confronted with disconfirming evidence. They become more efficient at dismantling it. They find the methodological flaw in the study. They locate the conflict of interest in the researcher's funding. They identify the ideological bias in the framing of the question. All of these may even be legitimate observations. But they are being deployed not in the service of truth-seeking, but in the service of belief preservation. The intelligence is real. The reasoning is sophisticated. And the conclusion is predetermined. This is not a failure of intelligence. This is intelligence running in the wrong direction. The echo chamber is the environmental structure that makes all of this worse. And the relationship between the backfire effect and the echo chamber is not incidental, it is architectural. When a person lives primarily within an information environment that reflects their existing beliefs back to them, the belief becomes not just personally held but socially reinforced. Every node in their social network confirms the belief. Every information source they consume confirms it. The belief becomes the water they swim in. And when a piece of disconfirming information manages to penetrate that environment, it does not arrive as a lone data point against a neutral background. It arrives as an alien signal in a space saturated with confirming signals. The cognitive contrast makes the disconfirmation feel more threatening, not less. The isolated fact, surrounded by a sea of contradicting social consensus, does not feel like evidence. It feels like an attack from outside the group. And the response is not evaluation. The response is rejection, and then a stronger recommitment to the group position. Social media has not created this dynamic, but it has industrialized it. The architecture of algorithmic content delivery is optimized for engagement, and nothing drives engagement like emotional activation, and nothing activates emotion like a threat to a cherished belief. Nyhan himself spent years after the original paper refining and complicating the findings. Because the backfire effect, as initially described, turned out to be harder to replicate consistently than the original study suggested. Subsequent research by Wood and Porter in 2019, using much larger samples, found that factual corrections generally did reduce misperceptions, even among ideologically invested participants. Although the reductions were modest, and did not always change attitudes or behavioral intentions. What this means is that the backfire effect is real, but it is not universal. It is not inevitable. It is context-dependent. It is modulated by how the correction is delivered, by the relationship between the corrector and the recipient, by whether the correction threatens identity or merely updates information, by whether the person is in a defensive or an open state when the information arrives. The phenomenon is not a wall. It is a condition. A set of circumstances that, when present, make minds close rather than open. And understanding those circumstances is the beginning of understanding how to navigate around them. The practical implications of all this research point in a direction that is deeply counterintuitive. If direct factual correction of identity constitutive beliefs reliably triggers backfire, then the strategy of leading with facts is not just ineffective. It is actively counterproductive. What the research suggests works better is a different kind of engagement entirely. Motivational interviewing techniques, developed in clinical psychology and applied to belief change, show that asking questions rather than presenting evidence produces better outcomes. Not rhetorical questions designed to expose contradiction, but genuine, curious questions that invite the person to examine their own belief from the inside. When a person articulates their own doubt, they own that doubt. When you present their doubt to them as a fact from outside, they fight it. The belief change that sticks is the belief change that the person experiences as self-generated. You cannot drag someone to a different conclusion, but you can sometimes create the conditions in which they walk there themselves. There is something in all of this that points at a much larger question about what truth is actually for in social life. The assumption underneath debate, and evidence, and rational discourse, is that truth is the shared goal. That when two people disagree about a fact, they are both trying to arrive at an accurate picture of reality. But the backfire effect, and cognitive dissonance, and identity-protective cognition all point toward a different picture. One in which truth is often not the primary goal at all. In which the primary goal is coherence, consistency, the maintenance of a self that makes sense, the preservation of group membership, the management of threat. And in service of those goals, the mind is capable of extraordinary sophistication. It will select evidence, weight testimony, construct narratives, generate counterarguments. All of it in real time. All of it below the level of conscious awareness. All of it experienced by the person doing it as honest, rational engagement with the question. The lie is not that the person knows they are wrong. The lie is that any of us knows how much of our reasoning is actually reasoning, and how much is defense. The most unsettling implication of the backfire effect is not what it says about the people whose beliefs resist correction. It is what it says about you. The research does not describe a category of especially irrational or especially ideological people who are uniquely vulnerable to this failure mode. It describes a feature of human cognition that is present in everyone. The specific beliefs that would trigger your backfire effect are the ones you cannot currently see as identity constitutive. Because if you could see them clearly as beliefs rather than as reality, you would already have some distance from them. The beliefs that are most offended are the ones that feel least like beliefs. They feel like perception, like obvious fact, like the kind of thing that only an idiot or a liar would dispute. And that feeling of obvious certainty is not a signal that you have arrived at truth. It is a signal that the belief has been absorbed into identity, that the defense system has been installed, that the next person who tries to show you the evidence is going to find the door not just closed, but locked from the inside. This has been the echo principle. We map the unseen blueprints of human behavior. The most fortified beliefs are the ones you have never had to defend, because you have never been able to see them as beliefs at all. We will see you in the next one.